This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 82. Welcome to the 82nd episode of the Fertility Friday podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lisa from FertilityFriday.com, and this is your source for information about the fertility awareness method and all things fertility. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you already know how passionate I am about connecting you with the tools and information that you need to improve your menstrual cycle health and your fertility. And that's why I started the podcast in the first place, because I strongly believe that every woman has the right to know exactly how her body and her fertility works. And I feel so privileged to be able to share my passion for body literacy and fertility awareness with you every single week. Fertility awareness is so much more than just birth control or trying to get pregnant, because it truly gives you a window into your own health and fertility. And I love sharing my expertise with my clients and helping them to understand their charts and to connect with their cycles. So if you've recently discovered fertility awareness, but you're not feeling quite so confident about using it for birth control just yet, I can help with that. Get started today with a free 15-minute consultation with me by heading over to fertilityfriday.com/coaching, or just click the work with me button on my website. I can't wait to delve in with you and get started. And I'd also like to invite you to sign up for the Fertility Friday newsletter. So just head over to fertilityfriday.com/ebook. And as a gift to you, you'll actually receive a free copy of my new ebook, where I reveal what to expect when coming off of hormonal contraceptives. And I also share 5 steps to restoring healthy menstrual cycles post-pill. And today, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Sarah Bly. Sarah is the founder of Grace of the Moon and the founder of one of the very few fertility awareness education teacher training programs that's available in North America. Sarah is a midwife, a fertility awareness educator, and a holistic women's health counselor. She's been working in the field of women's health for over 16 years, not to mention that she's been charting her own cycles for over 23 years. She's an active member of the Association of Fertility Awareness Professionals and the Natural Fertility Network in Ashland, Oregon, where she provides alternative and holistic options for women and couples who are dealing with infertility, as well as helping women and couples optimize their health during the preconception period. And in today's show, we'll be talking about fertility awareness and the important role that it plays in developing body literacy, the profound shift that often happens for women as they learn to listen to their body's wisdom by charting their cycles, and the future of fertility awareness education, and so much more. And before I jump into it, I just wanted to point out that I actually started talking before I hit the record button. I think I've only done that maybe once or twice. And so you'll notice that we just jump right into the interview. The first part of my introduction was cut off. So let's jump in. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been, watching your work for a number of years, and I would just love to hear the story of how you actually discovered fertility awareness.
Sure. I'd love to tell the story. I was in college, and my best friend grew up in a Catholic family, and she gave me this tiny little book from the farm in Tennessee, and she gave me a thermometer, and I started charting my cycle at about age 18. And I still have that same thermometer to this day. I still have that same friend to this day. And my book collection, of course, has grown. But I dove right in at that point. I used to just chart everything that I thought could possibly be related to my cycle. And I just got pretty obsessed with learning about my body. And that was a long time ago. So it's changed forms many times over the years. And my own personal practice has gone from a sort of half-assed practice when I was a teenager to something really solid. And now it's just part of my life. I don't think of it barely as a practice. It's just integrated completely into my day-to-day self-care. Mm-hmm. And I've used it for contraception, for conception, during breastfeeding, through a lot of hormonal imbalances and issues. So it's been quite a blessing and gift in my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to ask you to talk about body literacy and the role that fertility awareness can play in that and why it's even important. Why is body literacy a thing?
Yeah, good question. I would say when I first started teaching this material, which was in 2004, um, I looked at it more as a just by itself a practice, fertility awareness for this purpose and this purpose and so on. And these last many years, what that has grown into for me is something so much more deep and so much more broad, that encompasses what I see as listening skills. And that is listening to our body as well as listening to the earth. And a lot of my education at this point has to do with that greater connection we have to the rhythms and cycles of nature, and how inseparable that is to learning the rhythms and cycles and patterns of our own bodies. I'm also an environmentalist and activist, and I think that that's the power for me right now, is to guide women into that deeper listening and understanding. And the side effects are, yes, total empowerment for these women who are learning about their bodies. But I think it has an even greater impact in the choices that we make, and how we relate to our environment as well.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're all in these, not all, but many of us are in these concrete jungles, big cities,
Right.
little cities, whatever the case, and obviously disconnected to some extent with nature.
Yes.
So for the listener who has kind of, we've all kind of heard about people referring to menstrual cycles as your moon time, and we have a very basic general kind of awareness, most of us, that there's something there. Maybe you could delve into that a little bit and talk about the relationship that our bodies do have with nature and with the moon, or any other type of cycle that we're related to.
Yeah, I'd love to. And Where do I want to start there? A lot of that part of the education to me is about upholding our endocrine health more generally. So it's not just about our moon cycle, which what I see, how I see it is that the health of our hormones are the result of all of the organ systems and bodily systems upstream. Hormones tend to be sort of an end result on that, in that flow. And so I'm always working with women on listening to all the different parts of their body systems, to their digestion, to their circulation, to look upstream at what's going on in their bodies in order to more understand and to increase the health in the rest of their bodies. So to me, there's a day-to-day listening that we do to the seasons, to the weather patterns, the hot and the cold, to the light cycles. And by following those, by letting ourselves get cold in the winter and not having our indoor environment be stable year round, but letting ourselves feel that cold in our bodies, and letting ourselves get hot and sweat in the summer, by letting ourselves get sun on our skin during the day, and as the lights dim in the evening, that we dim in our lifestyles, that we slow down and let that darkness come in, and that we sleep in darkness, and that we're eating according to what food is growing around us during those different seasons. Those are, and yes, the moon, of course, the moon, that's definitely a big part of the listening also, and just paying attention. I don't subscribe to the story that it's ideal to cycle exactly with the moon. I think environmentally, culturally, we're way beyond that, and we cycle in all these different ways. but to pay attention to that and to understand that there's some great and mysterious perfection in the fact that women cycle in general in a lunar pattern over the course of close to a moon cycle. And men have a hormonal cycle that is similar to a solar pattern. They reach a peak every morning, once a day. And there's something really, I think, profoundly beautiful about understanding all of these connections, and again, listening into our bodies. And fertility awareness is one of those practices where we're listening on a daily basis to what our body's telling us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really profound. I couldn't agree with you more. I remember hearing something a long time ago about, how the moon pulls the ocean tides. And then you think about how we're all made up of 75% water. So kind of the composition of the earth is kind of the same as the composition of our bodies.
That's right.
Lo and behold, the moon is pulling our tides as well. So I think that it's really neat to connect with that. And if you start paying attention to the moon, it's really interesting to see how, like, if that's your thing, if that's something that interests you, if you start paying attention to the moon, you might notice that maybe a certain part of your cycle tends to happen around the time of the full moon.
Right.
And it's kind of neat to see how it happens cyclically.
Yes, I agree.
And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, grace of the moon, we're obviously talking about the moon here, but how did the name come about?
Well, it's funny you ask, because I came up with that name a long time ago, and I have been in the process of rebranding for the last couple years. So I'm actually very disconnected to that name, and it's going to change this year. I will have a new business name as well as a different name for my program. So the name, I don't even remember. This was like at least 15 years ago when I came up with it. And I'm guessing that one of the gifts that this process and this education has given me is a certain sense of grace in my connection to my sexuality and my body, and growing that intimacy that I've had the honor to do, the privilege to do, by being connected in this way. It feels very graceful. It feels like I have tapped into some of the deepest parts of being in the female body, deepest parts of femininity through this practice. So somehow that, to me, feels like grace in my body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you touched on a really important point, which is that I think a lot of women enter into this space in terms of fertility awareness with that goal in mind, right? Like, I either want to prevent pregnancy, or I want to get pregnant, and I want to figure this out so that it's easier for me to accomplish this goal. But then along the way, you kind of fall down the rabbit hole and realize that it's so much more profound than that. And
exactly.
And so maybe you could talk a little bit about, through your years of experience working with women, what it's been like to help women connect with their femininity and to connect with that inner wisdom that comes with charting your cycle.
Yeah. Well, you're so right that most women come to this work with a more singular directive. I want to learn this. And it's pretty remarkable how many women, after learning the practice, want to teach this work, this material, and want to tell everyone and spread the word. So I have been very blessed to have witnessed so many women go through this quite profound shift of like, oh, cool, natural birth control, to, oh my God, I had no idea. Why didn't somebody teach me this? That's the line. That's the line I hear in every single class, every consult, across the board, is, why didn't somebody teach me this sooner? Why isn't everybody learning this? And that realization can bring up grief. It can bring up anger. It can bring up a lot in this culture where we our educational system does not generally tend to those subtleties
Mm-hmm.
of our bodies. And I think, if a woman has been lucky enough to already have some comfort and connection to her sexuality and her intimacy, then it's not such a huge leap. But for a lot of women, it is, and like I said, it can bring up a lot because they're being told something that is their birthright, and they might be in their 30s and not have realized the depth of their body and the workings of their body, or they've been on the pill for years and years, and suddenly they see what they've been deprived of.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see so much beauty in that growth, in that change that women go through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I regularly get emails from listeners, and exactly what you just said is one of one of the responses that I get quite a bit, which is, I wish I would have learned this when I was 18. I'm
Yep.
42 now, and I can't tell you how beneficial and profound this information has been.
Right.
What would you say to the woman who's listening now, who is well into her 30s or early 40s or and beyond, and learning this for the very first time and feeling a bit of, obviously, understandably feeling a bit of frustration around that?
Yeah. Well, in a way, there's if it were someone I was talking to personally, it would really be about just listening to her and holding her. There's no way to change that reality, right? It is what it is, and it's unfortunate. And so just letting her feel whatever comes up around that, and knowing that the information carries through your entire life, even through menopause and past menopause into menopause. It's still incredibly valuable, and there's never too late of a time to learn it and become an advocate. Tell your children, your friends, your family, help them to receive this information so that you're making a difference that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that it kind of leads me into another question I want to ask to you, but just that idea that the only time our fertility matters is when we're trying to get pregnant, and otherwise
Right.
it's completely irrelevant.
Right.
And so that leads me to my question. You can take it however you want, but why aren't we taught this? So in your opinion, from your experience and your perspective, why do you think women are not taught this?
I think there's a lot of misassociations, unfortunately, in the history of this practice. It's generally been acquainted with the church and with Catholicism, and that has turned off a lot of people. And I think, honestly, that has something to do with why it's also not in medical school curriculum, because of those connections. So I think that's one big piece is the history, and it has not been kind of pulled apart and separated enough yet from that history. And I think that our culture in general is not very progressive around physical intimacy and sexuality. So when you teach a woman this practice, you're teaching her to touch herself and to explore her genitals and get to know what's going on down there. And that's a big stretch for certain veins of the culture that we live in here in North America. So I think that's part of it as well. I'm really excited about the organization FACS, which you probably have heard about, Fertility Awareness Collaborative to Teach the Systems, which is trying to bring this material into medical school curriculum. Again, I think there has to continue to be more effort to separate it from religious practices and at least name, okay, if you're going to work with a billings person, it has this set of circumstances. If you're going to work with a justice person, it's like this. If you're, to just name things for what they are, so people realize that the science has gone a lot further than the rhythm method, and people don't know that, and that there are both secular and religious-based practices.
Well, and I would add to that, because there's kind of allopathic through naprotechnology as well as naturopathic perspectives. So it's not even just the holistic side of it. Right. Because I've had the wonderful opportunity to interview a napro physician as well as a napro fertility care consultant. And so the interesting thing is that that's not naturopathic, right? It's not holistic, but it's within the medical system, and the profound, amazing service for women who are struggling with infertility. So even just to broaden that as well, because of course, Justice and the work that you do through Grace of the Moon is holistic based, but that's not even the only application we're talking about here.
That's right. So true.
And I wanted to touch on one of the points that you made, because I recently did an interview with the founder of Lunapads, and we really talked about that relationship that women have with their bodies, and just how disconnected we are, and not even wanting to touch, and why that is. And so one of the questions that leads me to is, how did learning the fertility awareness method change your own relationship with your body?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, it's hard to discern the different pathways in my life and what was giving me what and what was showing me what. I also studied in midwifery, learned so much on that path, and I've also studied conscious sexuality throughout the years. And yet this was one of the first introductions to any of those realms for me, was this charting practice. I feel like, for one, I've never been on hormonal birth control, which I think is rare in our culture. Mm-hmm. For someone who have never done any of that. And so I have been with every cycle in my reproductive years. It's been right there on the surface. I've watched it, I've noticed it. And it's been my greatest teacher. Because I do believe that, as I was saying earlier, our cycles and our hormones are kind of the downstream effect of so many other things going on in our bodies. So I have learned via that belief system for a lot of years. And when you have that kind of ultra awareness and sensitivity to how things are affecting other things in your body, for me, it created an ongoing deepening of awe and curiosity, and listening. And that transferred into my sexual relationships and my relationship to my sexuality. So there's something about that curiosity, that exploration that fertility awareness practices provide, that I think opens the door to, wow, isn't it interesting that I feel really turned on in these parts of my cycle and not in these parts? Oh, what if I communicate that and use that in my relationship? Not ever having to, I've barely used condoms in my life. And so I've had that true, like, skin to skin connection and fluid to fluid connection with a sexual partner, which I also think there's a lot to be said for that. Mm-hmm. In not having something in between you and a sexual partner. So, so it's given me, the practice has really given me all of those gifts but the greatest one really being that curiosity, to keep listening more deeply and more deeply, and knowing that my body is always going to be my greatest teacher. And I've studied a lot of different healthcare practices or I would say philosophies, healthcare philosophies, and I'm well steeped in naturopathic models of care. And yet I read scientific studies on many different topics, but I always come back to, well, what does my body have to say about that?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is intimacy. Um, that's For me, that's the deepest kind of intimacy that I seek to have, and how that goes beyond me and to this earth too, as I spoke of in the beginning. For me, is very profound. I feel very intimately connected to the natural world, which also came through this practice.
Mm-hmm. I feel as you're talking, I just resonate with what you're saying so much in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways is that I have taken hormonal contraceptives, so I don't have quote unquote virgin cycles, if you will. Just made that up.
I like it.
But I was on it for a couple of years. My doctor put me on it for a couple of years when I was a teen. But being that I've been off hormonal contraceptives then for the majority of my adult cycling life, I can relate to that so much. And the interesting thing is that today I received an email from a listener who just listened to one of the podcasts that I did with Holly Greg Spall. And we really delved into the emotional kind of muck that the pill can do, how it can kind of mess around with your emotions. But we also delved into what your cycle can teach you, and how, for me, my experience has been that my cycles kind of help to guide me. And so if something in my life isn't working, if I'm in a relationship or in a job that is not working for me, my cycles tell me, they remind me those
Right?
what's perceived to be negative in our culture about that period of time in your cycle where you're not really feeling so happy about certain things has been one of my greatest teachers, because then I can't stay in that job or I can't stay in that relationship because it just keeps coming up. And I've said it a number of times that I really wonder where I would be if I didn't have that teacher.
Yes.
To remind me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And another thing that I wanted to kind of pick up on as well is the comment that you make about condoms. I think it's important to talk about that, because I love I'm a champion of condoms because they're non-hormonal. However, the truth is that there's a lot of people who aren't satisfied with the sexual experience that they have with condoms. I mean, myself included. It's not my ideal situation either, if we're being honest, because there's that thing in between you. But I would argue that if you're on the birth control pill, you might not realize it, but there's also something in between you.
Absolutely. There's something completely missing.
Yeah.
There's something absolutely like gone from the whole equation of that connection. And that is your natural rhythm and cycle is missing. You've got a false one settled right in there instead. So, that's what's between you.
Yeah.
To me, that's what's between you. And there's a big missing piece.
And also your natural libido, because,
yes.
I would love to delve into that a little bit more with you as well, because I feel like when you're not on the hormones, then your natural hormones are doing their thing, and you're really able to connect with your sexuality, in the sense that, like you said, there's certain times in your cycle when you feel more aroused, but you kind of get to know that about yourself. You kind of it's really just like you get into yourself and really express your sexuality the way that you are kind of meant to.
That's right. Yeah. I think that is huge, and it maybe doesn't get noticed always that's so huge. I don't know if you're asking a question there with that comment.
Well, let me try to try to frame it. I mean,
okay.
I'm thinking I could go so many different ways, but But why don't you comment on just imagine if, because if you think about it now, there's millions and millions of women on hormonal contraceptives. And it's not to say, not to diminish their sexual experiences, because I think that's really ridiculous. But at the same time, it's a different experience. So
Yeah.
what would, I mean, what are your thoughts on that and how that could be impacting women in general, just not having
Right.
that full expression of their sexuality?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. There's no place or no need to diminish whatever women are experiencing while they're taking hormonal contraception, because our sexuality is ever present, and it's not totally dependent on our hormones. So that, yes, that's absolutely true. And I think it's a huge disservice, and really a crime that we take away that opportunity for women. I see how it had a really important place in history. I believe strongly that the evolution of women's sexual liberation was very dependent on the discover or the implementing of abortion, as well as birth control pills, and I think we have evolved far beyond those now, and we have the potential to let that be a part of our past and have that have been a learning experience. Like, oh wow, we can have sex whenever we want to, and we're not going to get pregnant, so we can just fully explore it. We can just have sex unlimited amounts, and and if something happens and a mistake happens, there's abortion, right? That took us through a phase of our sexual history that was huge. And now we're in the next phase, which is, oh, I guess that wasn't such a good idea to mess with our hormones, because we have now we've deprived women of feeling the depth of their sexuality and the rise and the fall and the dynamicism of their sexuality, and the whole, like, the t-shirt studies where women smell, or men's, wait, how's it go? Women are smelling the t-shirts of these men and saying which ones they're attracted to. And when a woman is on hormonal birth control, she loses that instinct to connect and mate with the optimal male mate. Mm-hmm. And that to me says so much. I quote that study all the time because it says so much about what is removed, what is denied when we're taking hormones, and that is that more animalistic, more primal way of connecting. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work in our common culture. Our common culture wants us to be producers and get up every morning and run on the solar rhythm. Get up in the morning and go to work and be productive and get shit done, and it's equal every day. Versus, the feminine pattern, which is sometimes of the cycle I get a lot done, and sometimes I don't get anything done. And that's okay. And emotionally, sometimes I'm joyful and easy to connect with. And sometimes I want to go be in my little cave, or I need to just speak my truth and be a bitch. Mm-hmm. Like that's all important. And that is, to me, the greater loss, as well as that deeper animalistic, primal connection that we have with, and I don't want to be hetero focused. I see it more like the feminine and the masculine energies. I don't want to, leave out the female to female connection. And there is something very physiological mm-hmm. about that attraction that we have, that is very connected to our hormones.
Well, maybe I'll go there a little bit, because what we talked about as well is that, this awareness that comes from tracking your cycles, it turns out to be a lot more than just birth control or trying to get pregnant. So mm-hmm. for women who are not in heterosexual relationships or in relationships with men, why would they still I mean, I know the answer to the question, but in your own, in your experience, I mean, how is it beneficial for women to have this knowledge and this opportunity to chart their cycles, even if they're not in a relationship with men?
Right. Yeah. Well, I can look at that through a lot of different lenses. One is self-care and health care. And to be able to track your cycles means tracking how your hormonal system's doing. And you and I both know there are huge benefits to having balanced levels of the steroidal hormones of estrogen and progesterone. And there's a lot of interferences in our environment and our cultural practices and our lifestyle that get in the way of that optimal function. So tracking your cycle is a way to see, oh yeah, my hormones are doing okay, or oh yeah, there's something going on here that's not optimal, and no wonder I have this other health issue and this one, and it's all connected. So it's an incredible way to monitor our general health as well as specifically our hormonal health. Mm-hmm. Our endocrine, so like different levels, our hormonal health, yes, our endocrine health, absolutely. And then, all the way up to what else is going on in our physiology. So I'd say that's one of the big pieces. And the other is that cyclical nature of our energetics, our energy level, our place in the world, knowing when you're going to menstruate, being able to plan your life accordingly, knowing when you're going to feel those different ways, getting to know what that looks like for you, because that looks different for different women. It's not obviously just across the board. Everyone gets grouchy before their period and is happy when they're ovulating. You got to listen and find out what your pattern is. But knowing that also is a service, I think, to yourself and those around you that you're in a relationship with. And then lastly would be everything we talked about intimacy and sexuality, and having that kind of curiosity and respect and awe for this amazing human body and this amazing planet, which is where we're drawing all of our energy that we're tracking here and learning about and loving. That's all coming. The source is this amazing planet. And to understand that is a huge gift. And it's necessary right now, I think, with the given situation, environmentally.
Yeah, I feel like the more that I learn about the body and about health and about the more you delve into learning about the endocrine system, and you learn about digestion, and you learn about the microbiome and the hormonal system, the more you learn about the intricacies of the body, it's just the more in awe that I end up feeling about the body and then life experiences as well. So having had now 2 children and going through the process of pregnancy and birth, just the more that I learn, like the more that I'm just in awe of this amazing body that we have, that we take for granted every day. Right. So that's a whole other topic that I could go on a tangent about.
Right. And think of how this world would be different for females, for girls, if everyone had that level of awe and respect for their bodies. Like, wow. Things would be different.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I had thought about asking you as well was, because it's kind of related, a lot of women now are feeling dissatisfied with the experiences they have with physicians, even people that are really they have nothing against doctors. I have nothing against doctors either, but then you have certain experiences that just keep happening as a woman that are just not satisfying. So maybe you could just speak to, it seems like there's a bit of a movement, we're in the middle of it, or in the
Yeah.
beginning stages of it, where women are really, and men too, but women specifically are seeking alternatives because
Yeah.
we're just dissatisfied with what's not being done about our issues.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'd like to believe that where we're moving towards is women being the experts of their own bodies. And as we wake up and see what a failure the Western medical system has been for us, which I think is just obvious right now, that we've been misdirected, misguided for a long time. And we've been looking at our body and our health in a super I would say nonsensical way, in that we've been holding each body system separate from the others, and that system I think is or that way of thinking is falling apart, because it's not working, and it's not working, and it's not working, and so women are seeing that, and we're wanting something different, and it's hard to find, even within alternative medical care. There's a lot of what Susan Weed would call heroic tradition care providers who might just treat you with a whole list of herbs instead of a whole list of medications.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a treasure to find care providers who can actually look at the whole person and the interconnectedness. And it's not easy, and it's not quick, and it's not straightforward. It takes time. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of exploration, a lot of listening. And I think we have to decide that we want to be partners in that healthcare process if it's really going to work. If we continue to go to healthcare practitioners to have them solve our problems, I don't think we're going to get very far. And that's a huge paradigm shift, mm-hmm. for women to take that responsibility of listening and then doing what they need to do to create change, which is gonna inevitably be more challenging than just taking a pill. It's going to take a little more time and energy to change your lifestyle, to change your diet, to change your belief systems, to process emotional baggage. It takes a lot. Yeah.
Well, exactly. But, I mean, in the work that I do with clients, in terms of fertility awareness, if my client isn't partnering with me and taking any types of actions, right, to improve health, mm-hmm. and to do different things, then what changes are you going to see in the cycle, right? It's so, right. I don't have like this magic pill that I can just give you that's going to just fix everything. There's lots of, it's interesting because this kind of even touches on what you said around just, there's so many care providers out there now. I think there's a lot of people out there trying to help women, and I think there's so much information going around that it gets really confusing. Mm-hmm. And so I often, it's like, oh, I have this problem, what can I take? If I take this, right. Is that going to fix it? And it's so interesting because you could take anything. One thing isn't going to change the right. situation. It's and exactly what you said, that it's not, we have to take that holistic approach, because your uterus is not just by itself on the beach, like it's in your body and it's connected to everything else. It's not just, we can't just look at one thing and think we just do this one thing and everything's going to fall into line.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I think, it's wonderful and exciting to imagine how that things could change so that more women can do that. And it's also extremely intimidating because, what women have extra time and energy. Part of this greater patriarchal time that we're within, where I'm, when I referred to, well, we're meant to get up each day and go to work and be productive. And that has created a a situation that really squelches the opportunities for women to have the time and have the energy. We're all super moms. We're trying to work and be a mom and volunteer and all
Mhm.
these different things, be active, be superstars. And does our health get factored into that? For a lot of women, no. I have women who come to see me, and when I give them suggestions, I don't hear back from them. And I know for a lot of them it's overwhelming. Or somebody who is living and eating a very typical, I mean, for me, mostly American clients. So, typical American diet and lifestyle. And for me to talk about, well, you might want to consider removing these hormone disruptors from your environment. And I can feel their energy pull back of like, whoa, like I have to change all those things. And it's challenging for someone in your position or my position to be with the reality of what we're living in right now, and how to work with someone, little baby steps, little things that are attainable, as they move forward to create that health and that connection. It's really important because it can get so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's important as a care provider to meet your client where they are,
Yeah.
and really recognize that it doesn't have to be everything at once. For myself, there was no overnight transformation in terms of everything.
Right.
There were stages over the past 13 years to where I got to, or to where I'm at now. And so
Right.
if 13 years ago someone had told me to do all the things I do now, like, oh, stop eating this type of food, and, eat organic and blah, 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 and all of the
Right.
things, that it would have been over. I actually think I did have someone tell me that. Who am I kidding?
Uh-huh.
I was taught through Justice. So I used to see Geraldine, and she had a lot of suggestions for me when I was 23 or whatever. And I couldn't do it. It was too much at
Yeah.
the time. I didn't have the income to be able to change my eating habits. Some of the things were out of my control, based on where I was living. I didn't have my own, like I was living either with roommates or, you just, so,
Right.
so I would really share that with the client who's struggling and remind them, like, I didn't do that overnight either. You got to start with like one thing.
Yes.
That's it. And feel good
Exactly.
about that, the one thing,
Yes.
because you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Yep.
today.
There's time. There's plenty of time.
So to shift gears a little bit, I wanted to hear I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about the importance of a teacher. So I know not every single woman who charts her cycles needs to rely on a teacher. Um, but given the conversation that we've had and the number of women that have problematic cycles, where does a fertility awareness educator fit in, and why would someone want to consider that?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of experiences with women who studied via a book and then came to me for whatever reason. And what I find a lot of times is that there's some little missing piece somewhere along the way. And unless you have another human that's looking through your charts with you and that is really checking in about your understanding and your own assessment of your own charts, there's a lot of potential for something to slip by. And so I think that even if you learn through a book or videos online, whatever it is, to have have a backup, have someone, a real life person who can go through and make sure and just be certain that your charting is that your understanding of your charts are solid, and that you have a sustainable practice, that you have a practice that works for you. Because I also see a lot of people give up because some aspect of it doesn't work for them. And if you work with a educator, then you can have someone guide you and support you in, oh, maybe we need to just tweak how you're doing this temp thing, and maybe you need to just sleep in on the weekends. And what are the little differences that could make it sustainable for you?
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I know from working pretty closely with Geraldine at Justice these last couple of years in AFAP, I know that both the Justice program and my program are based in a model of understanding the body that came out of the experience I believe that both she and I have had, which is more women that have cycles that are off or irregular than women who have just your average, everyday, perfect cycle. And so that's the other major obstacle, is that so many women have hormonal imbalances, and I can't rightly educate teachers to work with these clients unless they understand that model of healthcare, and they can be advocates. They can have a really good way to refer, a good referral system to other healthcare providers, that they can give some solid basic tools for upkeeping health and endocrine health. That feels so vital to me. And you're not going to get that from a book either. Mm-hmm. You can learn certain things, but I'm talking about understanding your situation, to be able to look at what's going on in your body and how is that showing itself, expressing itself through your cycle. One-on-one feedback will make a world of difference from a trained educator who I in particular, I have mostly experience with Justice and with my program, and I feel so solid that these educators are coming out with a very strong education and background in understanding the body on many levels.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the truths around fertility awareness charting is that you don't know what you don't know. And I see this. So an example of what I see, so for example, women in a charting forum taking pictures of their mucus and sharing it. Sometimes I see mucus on there that's really highly problematic, that could indicate cervical inflammation or a host of different things that are not healthy. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know that, then because I as well was caught on the train of empowerment. It was amazing when I started learning my cycles, and my cycles were completely outside of the realm of healthy because I had a thyroid issue. And the way one of the ways that expressed itself was my cycles were like really long, like 45 days. Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's just how my cycles are. Right. I'm Lisa, and I have 45-day cycles, and that's okay. It's not okay. And so, and it's the same kind of thing. So that's just an example, but there's just certain things that you may not know, like you just don't know, that you don't know them.
Yep. And, having mentioned thyroid, that's something I feel incredibly passionate about, because I have seen so many cases of undiagnosed thyroid issues that can be seen on a chart and with a few questions. And our medical system leaves so many women in the dark around thyroid health. And so many women are not being supported in the ways they need to because of the way our medical system works with thyroid. So we have something really awesome to offer. And you're right. You just don't know some of those things unless somebody tells you. And, they're not getting the appropriate labs, even, a lot of people, from their providers as far as thyroid goes.
Yeah, and it's another challenge to, even when you're aware, it's another hurdle to even get your doctor to run the labs, because it doesn't align with your doctor's paradigm of thyroid health. So that's another topic that I could just rant on.
We could do a whole nother hour on that one.
I know. So I'll just rein myself in there. And so why don't you talk a little bit about the program that you developed to train fertility awareness educators, and what sets it apart from other programs, or what is unique about it?
So I run a 2-year training program, and my students graduate or are certified in the end as fertility awareness educators and reproductive and sexual health educators. And that is also upheld by AFAP, which is our international professional organization. So they're certified automatically through AFAP as well. And what I love about the program is really what I have stated already about the perspective of healthcare and understanding the body. That is the foundation for what I teach in this program. In that I think that has such a huge potential to create change for the women on the planet right now, is that that greater awareness of the holistic nature, the interconnectedness of the body, and of our sexuality and to this planet. So that's deep in the curriculum, those listening skills. And I'd say a few of the things that are unique are that it's a collaborative education. So we meet online each week for class. We spend 3 hours a week together online with video and sound, so we can see each other. We're in an online classroom. And so I'm also, I'd like to believe I'm also creating community for these educators as they go through this 2-year program. I bring in a lot of guest teachers so that I'm not the only one offering them information. And yeah, I think that's what I want to say about the program.
Okay, and of course, I want to know what inspired you to create a teacher training program. How did that come about?
So it came about because I had more requests coming in my inbox for how do I learn to be a fertility awareness educator than I did for how do I learn to practice fertility awareness. And I kept mentioning that to my husband, and eventually he's like, Sarah, it seems like you're being asked something here.
Tune in.
Yep. And that was, like 2010. And I created the program in 2011. I spent about a year creating the curriculum. I'm on my 3rd round of the 2-year program right now. And and I still do see clients privately, and I do a lot of lecturing and the education piece, and not just fertility awareness. I do a lot of other topics of women's health and sexual health education. But this is definitely my main passion, and it really fully came out of that there's a lot of interest, and there continues to be. I've had more and more women asking me every year, more and more women requesting information on the program. So it's very, it's a hot topic. Women want this, and they want to share it with each other. And I think that's just brilliant. I'm thrilled. And I'm so honored. I feel like incredibly honored to be in the position that I am. And, my teachers, I had a few mentors, role models in my education, and 2 of them passed away sort of right at the crux of having given me the information and knowledge that I have. And so there was a certain baton being handed off also that I felt responsible for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so profound and amazing, the work that you're doing, because you're impacting thousands of women around the world, which is really exciting. And so where do you see the future of fertility awareness education? I know I did an interview with Geraldine, and we were talking about the Association of Fertility Awareness Professionals And so where do you see the future of this profession?
Well, I also am really happy about the movement and evolution of our professional network. A lot of women putting in a lot of time and energy towards creating the strength there that we need to become more visible, more upheld in the scientific communities and medical communities, separating from religious practices. I think all of that is really important. I think that the Association of Fertility Awareness Professionals has a really important role to play in the future, and I think we will. I think that's going to happen. And connecting more internationally to other programs and other teachers, and so that network becomes stronger and stronger, and we're teaching each other as we go, and we're supporting and upholding each other as we make this more of a viable option for women. And I'd like to think that the increasing interest in the training programs is showing us that there's an increased desire for this material to spread and really reach a lot of different audiences. I also am excited about FACTS, as I mentioned before, the organization that is trying to implement this into medical school curriculum. I think that has to happen if we're going to make an impact, because that's a big piece of our healthcare system right now in the United States is medical doctors, is MDs. And if they continue to carry on an old story, which is what I hear over and over again from my clients, that they went to see their doctor and their doctor shrugged their shoulders or rolled their eyes, or wrote them off because they said they use fertility awareness, that has to change. And the inside way to affect that change is to get into the medical schools and give them the truth, because they just simply don't have the answers. It's not that there's a controversy about how well this practice works or what the benefits are. It's that it's just not there. It's not a part of that system. So in my eyes, that's integral. I work with naturopaths in a practice here in Oregon, and I also have had the great honor of teaching at the Naturopathic College in Portland, and I also hope to continue that myself, is working with naturopathic medical school students, because of course it does fit into their curriculum a little more smoothly. So I also foresee that will make an impact. I hope that makes an impact.
Yeah, I agree with you that it has to happen because, I mean, the foundational basis of fertility awareness is basic biology. I really liked biology in school. I mean, it was kind of easy, right? There's like an answer, like you just learn the parts and then you know.
Right.
So it kind of went with that part of my brain, because I'm kind of a nerd like that. And so not getting into the psychosocial aspects of it or the holistic health aspect of it, the very basic biology of a woman's menstrual cycle, enough. It needs to be taught correctly. Let's start there. Like, why is this not happening?
Exactly. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
man.
I really encourage all of my graduates to create a curriculum to teach young girls. I think there's a lot of obstacles there, but to me, that would just make my heart sing to imagine that I'm sending these graduates out and that that's one place that they're applying their wisdom. So important.
Yeah.
And if I can say one more thing on that note, is the other thing I think is going to create this change, unfortunately, is the decline of health on our planet. And so many times it's that fear, it's the infertility, or it's the severe hormonal imbalances that will motivate someone to make changes. And I think that because of the trends in our culture, that we're heading more in that direction, where women are having more trouble and more issues. And that's super unfortunate, but I really hope that helps awaken more women to to want to listen more and learn more.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think I've quoted this. I had an interview with Dr. Thomas Count. I feel like I'm just going to keep quoting what he said, but I'm going to do it again. And so in the podcast, he basically said, if you're going to a doctor and you tell the doctor, I can't have a bowel movement, that's a problem. We all know that's a problem. We all know that you need to have bowel movements in order to live. But if you go to a doctor and you say, I can't get pregnant, for some reason it's looked at differently. And so I guess I'm just going to keep saying it because I just found it to be so powerful until we realize that our fertility is integrally, it's just a part of us, and it's an integral part of our health, and it's a reflection of our health. And if you're having a fertility challenge, that's a sign that the overall health there's something going on there. Until we really get our heads around that, then what's going to change? Exactly.
You got it.
So a few final questions before we wrap up our interview today. And I love asking these questions at the end, but what would you say if you had to pick one? What is the biggest myth about fertility that you'd like to see corrected?
The biggest myth about fertility? Gosh, I might have to sit with that one for a bit. You know what? The first thing that pops into my mind is women who say, "Oh, I'm just super fertile. That method will never work for me," or my grandma did that and she has 7 kids. Or so the science, this is directly related to contraception, and I know that's just one little piece of it, but the lack of scientific backup in so many stories is appalling. That if you look at the science and see that we are only fertile for this certain number of days each cycle, and the fact that women don't get that they're taking a pill every day of their cycle. They're treating every day equally as if they're all risky days for conceiving. That drives me crazy. Yeah.
I have to wonder if every woman knew that she was only fertile for 5 to 7 days. I mean, on average, per cycle. Then would she make the same decision about her contraceptive choice? I don't know. Maybe she would, but at least she would know.
Exactly.
Okay. And what would you say is the biggest myth about the fertility awareness method that you would like to squash?
Oh, well, maybe I just answered that one.
2 in 1. That's okay. Okay. Well, last question of the day then. For a woman who is currently on the pill and she knows she doesn't want to get pregnant now, but she is thinking about pregnancy within the next 2 or 3 years, what advice, if any, would you give to her?
I would say get off of the pill as soon as you feel ready, and educate yourself on how to create balance in your cycle again, and give yourself plenty of time. I teach a whole class on how to do that informs women what has gone astray with these hormones in your system for as long as they have been, what systems in your body might need extra support to create that balance again, and that it's something that takes time. Your cycles will need to readjust, and even if they look like they're doing okay, give time and space and give extra energy and support to your body during that phase. I often recommend like a 2-part plan of cleaning out the system, and then building and preparing your body for the conception. So to have enough time to do that is really vital if we want to create healthy babies.
Well, those are amazing words to end on. Sarah, I just want to thank you so much for being here today and for taking the time to share your knowledge and your wisdom with the listeners. I absolutely enjoyed our conversation, and it was my pleasure just to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I really, really enjoyed it too. It was awesome, and you're a great interviewer, and I really appreciate the service that you are offering to women, and I suppose men too. It's really, really a gift. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot. So why don't you take a moment to tell the listeners a little bit about where they can find you if they have been inspired to learn the method, or if they want to actually learn to teach the method.
I have a website, and the current address and title is graceofthemoon.com. Just how you would think that would be spelled, graceofthemoon.com. As I will be rebranding this year, I'll have it, if you go there, it will always get you to the new website as well. I'll make a link for that. But there will be some new titles involved. And on that website, there's information on lectures, consultations, the teacher training program, a lot of other resources. I also, the group practice that I work in here in Ashland, I work with 2 naturopaths and a Mayan abdominal massage therapist and an acupuncturist. And we all do at a distance work. Well, the acupuncturist doesn't and the massage therapist doesn't, but the other 3 of us do. That is Natural Fertility Network .org, I'm pretty sure. We're based out of Ashland, Oregon. And I think that should cover it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend. You'll find the show notes page for today's episode at fertilityfriday.com/82. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please look for it on iTunes and leave a 5-star review so that more people can find it. And make sure to head over to fertilityfriday.com and join my email list. If you have an idea for a podcast episode or a guest suggestion, send me an email at info@fertilityfriday.com. And remember that you don't have to figure it all out yourself. I absolutely love helping women to connect with their cycles, and I can't wait to delve in with you and help you bring your cycles back to health. Get started today with a free 15-minute consultation with me by heading over to fertilityfriday.com/coaching, or just click on the Work With Me button on my website. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. I appreciate all of you for taking the time to tune into the podcast and letting me be part of your day. So whatever you're doing, whether you're going for a walk or if you're doing housework, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And as always, until next time, be well and happy charting.